He's going to present a PowerPoint presentation, and then I will return to give you a sense of what's going to happen for the rest of the evening. Thanks so much.
Move it around a little bit. So I just wanted to thank you again for coming and coming out this evening and giving up your time to talk about such an important issue. So just going to go through some brief information and talk about some things, and then give you a chance to talk and get your questions answered as we move around, and Barbara will talk about that part. So the first part is to really share our objectives of these meetings. It's really a chance for you to give us feedback on the proposals, and these are proposals. There has been no action on these at all except planning and proposal stage. So we really encourage you to give us all the feedback you can tonight. I hope everyone had a chance to read the frequently asked questions, and I hope that that answered some of those, and if any of those need clarification, please call us over after we do the presentation to clarify any questions you may have from those. So first I'm going to share this school-by-school proposed vision.
There's a question back here.
Where's the proposal written down so that we can look at it? Specifically.
If you can give me a chance to go through this, and then if there are questions afterwards, we're going to get around to answer those. So tonight we want to share the school-by-school proposed vision for the AAP Center expansion. We want to invite your reflection, and we really want to hear from you the benefits and challenges, as well as collect any alternative ideas or solutions. And then we're going to collect those reflections, and we're going to share those with the school board so that they have an informed decision-making process. So let me start with a little background and context for this. For various reasons, partially because of some overcrowding at some centers, as well as some questions of some equity and access across the county, a task force was convened in the spring of 2012. And the essential question that was given to this task force was, how do we provide level 4 curriculum and instruction to every eligible level 4 student who has the potential to succeed in that? So really, how can we make sure that all of our students who have been identified as level 4 students can actually receive the services that they need so that they can reach their full potential? That was the charge given to the task force. So who was on this task force? What is it? Again, the context for the task force, the reason it was convened is because we have a growing enrollment in FCPS. We are over 180,000 students now. That's over the last 5 years. We've had about 16,000 student growth. That puts us at the 10th largest district in the nation. And projections say we're going to continue to grow. Along with the growth of our overall enrollment, we have continued to have growth in our AAP Center eligible students. And so, as you know, particularly in Cluster 1, there are some centers that are either at capacity, over capacity, or will be there very soon. In fact, we have 3 centers in the county right now where they are capped and they can't accept any more students. Those are Archer, Louise Archer, Hunter Woods, and Haycock. So we also have additional centers that are going to reach that. So how can we provide access to level 4 services to all of our students? When you look at the map of where our level 4 centers are, we actually have 6 pyramids where there are no level 4 centers. Some of those students also choose, they're sort of put in a dilemma. Some students, when they don't have one in their pyramid, do I choose to go to the center program, or do I stay back at my base school? And that's a tough choice for some of our students. So, who was on this task force? Well, first of all, we were very fortunate to have Dr. Joyce Van Kasselbaska, who is a national leader in gifted, to facilitate the task group. And she led the group through a series of information and questions to get them to where they were. We sort of reviewed the enrollment trends, the history of gifted education, the research behind it. There were principals, representatives from all the different departments. There were cluster representation, instructional services, as well as teachers and counselors on this task force.
there any parents?
And over a 6-month period, they did formulate some key recommendations and identified some next steps. And if you look at the last bullet, one of the key next steps was to collect feedback from key stakeholders that included community members and parents and school staff. So what did this task force come up with? First, they said, their main overarching vision was, can we create and align a K-12 continuum of advanced academic services in all of our pyramids to expand access to every cluster and make sure that those 6 pyramids currently without AAP centers would have them. Particularly at middle school, what this means is that they would have a center at every middle school, and that the other recommendation is that it would really begin with rising 7th graders, and that the current students in centers, when this would happen, would not be affected by this. So students would be grandfathered in and would not be pulled out of centers that they've already attended. At the elementary school, it was to make sure that we had a center at every one of those 6 pyramids. And once again, it would start with rising 3rd graders, which means that it's students who have not even been identified for level 4 services yet, haven't gone through the eligibility process, and grandfather in grades 4 through 6, allowing those students to finish out their center experience where they started. So again, the rationale behind this and the task force reason behind this was to provide that continuum of advanced academic services in all pyramids, just to provide that equity of access to all students. And that the capacity of the current level 4 centers to physically accommodate these high numbers was really being stretched. And I think if you look at some of our centers that are really at or over capacity, almost every single space is being used as classrooms just for general education, which means they've taken over music rooms, art rooms are being taken over, as well as even library spaces. There's really running out of room. There's lots of students going out of the building to the modulars that are outside, and they're running out of space even to put those modulars. And as we said, some of these are capped and not able to accommodate additional students. So the task force completed its work in September, and then the recommendations were delivered to the FCPS leadership team. And so the leadership team began identifying sort of what might be the next steps. And so the first next step was this even feasible? Could we identify even some possible sites for some new centers? And so there was a lot of consideration about what sort of facilities even had capacity still, what were the different issues around transportation, which we know is certainly an issue here in Northern Virginia. And so from that, some preliminary sites have been identified, knowing that many of these sites will require a lot of people and a lot of thoughts to figure out if those are really the best sites. And that's part of what we need to hear from you. There are so many things that you as community members and parents know about individual sites that will help us make sure that the sites that are chosen really are the ones that could actually accommodate these students and have the right programs and things that we would need for a center to open. So the actions that were taken. As soon as some preliminary sites were identified, we met with principals with a readiness checklist to sort of talk about what sort of things really need to be in place so that we make sure that we have a quality center in place. So certainly one of the most important things that we need to make sure for a center to be in place is that there are highly qualified teachers with level 4 training in those buildings so that they know how to meet the needs of those students. Another thing that's very important, and all the research says, and the reason that we have such a nationally recognized program in Fairfax County, is that there has to be a critical mass of students. Do we have, if we realign some of these sites, that critical mass of students that really would allow for a center program? And that's, if you look in a little bit, we're going to be showing you the numbers for your particular base school and the center that it accompanies, as well as if you're at middle school, you'll be able to see all the different projections that we have thus far. So that's really going to be something for you to look at and make sure that you give us feedback on based on the number of students that are projected for that first year, which would just be rising 3rd graders and rising 7th graders. The next thing that we know is very important is that it's not just what happens during the school day, but what happens after the school day. Our centers have very rich programs, extracurricular programs. They offer math counts, science Olympiad, so many opportunities that extend the learning beyond the school day for our students. Do the schools themselves have the ability to support those sort of programs? That's another very important consideration. Is the facility ready? We talked about that already. Is there enough space? What's going to happen down the road in terms of growth of enrollment? All those things are very important. And then, of course, transportation, we always have those issues. So in terms of actions and a timeline, it was to come to first the principals, because they know their buildings best, to sort of think about that readiness checklist and think about an implementation timeline. And then also to go to the community and figure out from you, when would we do this? Is this the right time? What sort of feedback can you provide on that? So let me just hit the highlights of the proposed recommendations to make sure everyone's clear on those. We would begin at the elementary schools with the 3rd grade. So grades 4 through 6 would be grandfathered in. At the middle school, we would begin with rising 7th graders, except that our 3 middle schools that do start at 6th grade, those would be rising 6th graders. That's Poe, Glasgow, and Holmes. So we begin with the 7th grade, and 8th graders would be grandfathered in, the rising 8th graders. This is an important point I want to point out below that second bullet. Center eligible students will be in their separate center classes. This is not a merge with the honors classes. So in the schools, you would have your standard level courses, your honors level courses that are open enrollment, and you would have center courses for those level 4 eligible students. Honors, of course, will continue to be part of the continuum of advanced academic services, but it's not the same as the level 4 services. And grade 8 students, as I said, would be grandfathered in. As always, transportation will be provided, even for those grandfathered students, transportation will be provided for them. And pupil transfers, which we know a lot of that makes a big difference in terms of if you have siblings in a school and in terms of looking at those sort of things. Those are going to be followed under the current guidelines that we do have in our regulation. There's a website here. It's also on your frequently asked questions, as well as a contact person, Lori Hershey, in terms of transfer questions. And then the last bullet is very important too. Provided that school readiness checklist is assured, provided that we know that we have that critical mass of students and a qualified staff, we would look to begin implementation in the fall of 2013, but that's also part of the feedback that we need from you. So, again, the timeline in terms of some decision making that you'd be interested in is that these community engagement meetings are happening this week. We had clusters 6, 7, and 8 on Tuesday. We had 4 and 5 yesterday, and 1, 2, and 3 are here today. We're going to be gathering that feedback, and Barbara's going to talk about how we're going to be making sure the community and the school board members have access to all the feedback. There's a school board work session on December 10th, and a school board decision would be in the January timeframe for schools possibly implementing in 2013.